Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, the final chapters. Let's watch.
I asked Shayne, do you think you maybe had a little bit too much to drink? And he just got really, really angry at me.
Okay, so we're learning that the two of them got in a fight last night. According to her, he was maybe too drunk, maybe the both of them were, and he got really angry and he said some really hurtful things. So that's pretty scary. I mean, given what we've seen from him, we can imagine what that entailed in terms of at least his physicality. He seems to have a very quick temper and uncontrollable in some ways. By the way, I don't know if you watched my comment video, but I commented on a scene where, and I won't review that whole thing. If you did watch, I'll just summarize it. But I didn't comment, during the bachelor party, they did batting practice at, I believe, Wrigley Field, and they were, he I think was bragging going into it, saying, I played college ball, and other people like Sal were just like, I haven't played since T-ball, and then Sal proceeds to hit well, and it looked like Shayne struck out completely, didn't hit a single ball. In the comment video, I went into full analysis of a swing that it looked like he was dipping his shoulder. He was trying to knock it out of the park. He was pulling his head as well. And as a former baseball player myself that went through a similar phase, I could relate to him. I also can relate to the extreme anger of people expecting you to do well. I grew up a jock, and so when I enter into kind of events like that, there's this expectation that I'm going to do really well, either within myself or other people expecting me to do well. And it's just like, sometimes that pressure, sometimes you're just having an off day or something, and you don't do well. Sometimes you just don't hit the ball. You just have an off day, and it's humiliating, right? It's one thing to be Sal, where it's just like your T-ball, let's say Sal completely missed all the pitches. It's like, well, I'm not a baseball player. But if you're Shayne, you're just like, if I don't do at least as well as everyone else, or better, then I'm a failure. You feel it. I get that, So, I felt bad for him. But then afterwards, the way he talked about it, he was unglued, it seemed, when he was in the stands. He seemed upset. He seemed like, because there's a way of dealing with that internally and externally that will provide more resilience, a way of just being like, oh, maybe you just announced to everyone, well, that was completely humiliating. I bragged to y'all that I played college ball, and I think I was in my head, and I just completely whiffed on all the pitches, which I have to say, I'm a loser now. I'm a bragging, striking out loser, and I hope y'all will forgive me. You just make a joke out of it. And I lost my temper and I threw the bat, which is just completely unsportsmanlike, and sorry everyone. Can we just have some shots and move on with it? There's a way of dealing with it, right? But he couldn't do that. And for seemingly a long span after, he was still boiling about it, which points to something. I don't know what. And I wonder if, was the bachelor party literally last night? I don't know, but did it happen after that? Was he still steaming about that? So, I don't know, but if you grow up with significant neglect or criticism, you will develop a vision of yourself that you're inferior, that there's something wrong with you, people aren't going to like you, you're inherently unlikable, you're inherently neglectable, and you don't matter. And you're left alone to your own devices as a very young child, and you have an opportunity to develop various different defenses to defend against those very painful schemas and beliefs, one of which is what we will call narcissistic personality, which is this defense of grandiosity. I am special. I'm superior. Not only am I not as inferior as I believe I am the way I'm being treated, I'm actually superior. I am better than everyone. And I need to convince myself of that to protect myself against all this evidence that I am inherently inferior. There's something deeply wrong with me. So I have to constantly stay in the treadmill of narcissistic supply. I might ask for a lot of compliments. I might be very sensitive to criticism because that threatens that superiority and throws me back into deep inferior. We're not talking like just mild. All of us have felt inferior and have sensitivity to inferior. Narcissistic individuals have, it's an abyss. I specialize in working with narcissistic individuals, borderline individuals, and when narcissistic individuals go off that emotional cliff into the abyss of inferiority, when they've lost control over their defenses of superiority and grandiosity, they become completely unglued emotionally. They cannot cope. There's nothing to hold on to. That's why they hold very, very tightly to superiority and grandiosity and specialness and entitlement. And when that happens, there can be a very childish reaction of emotions, one that looks that of a child, of just like just desperation, and becoming unglued, the inability to regulate, the inability to soothe the self. To people with personality disorders, they were not given an opportunity, or they weren't treated in a way that they internalized an ability to soothe who they are. For me, for example, I was raised relatively well, and so when something happens in my life, like if I were to be bragging about being able to hit the ball, which I hope I would never do, and then I struck out, I would have this ability afterwards to say, well, that was humiliating, on camera, no less, but I know I'm a good enough person, and boy, I bragged about it. That doesn't feel good, but I don't know. I know I'm good. I know I'm a good enough person. I'm not a horrible person. Maybe all these people are going to hate me. Maybe literally everyone in the world is going to hate me after they see the show. But I know that I'm a good enough person. I know the people around me love me. For people with personality disorders like narcissism, they don't have that. They don't have that ability. They can't internally soothe. They can't say to themselves, yeah, well, that was humiliating, but I'll be okay. They don't have that. They have none of that. They have zero ability to do that. And so when something threatens, deeply threatens their veil of superiority and specialness, they fall off the cliff and can become extremely irrational, angry, abusive, harmful, self-destructive in a variety of ways: drinking, drugging, sexing, spending money, whatever. There's various different ways that people will try to soothe just out of desperation.
I think despite being and getting into a big fight, I still love him, and he's like still my best friend. I just I don't know. So, yeah, it's tough. You just wish that they would just give it a few more weeks or months or years. It's like, you just had this huge fight. Maybe don't get married tomorrow. Maybe. Can't you just say, hey, I'm sorry. Can we just say maybe on the altar and give it a few more months? Can we reshoot this scene after a while? But, okay. Now, to be clear, I'm not diagnosing anyone. I just use this show as a jumping off point. If Shayne were a client of mine and he were to tell me about these stories, one of the dozens of roads, conceptualization-wise, that I would go down would be what I was talking about earlier. If we found that mutually, collaboratively to make sense together, I would not think he was a severe case. I've worked with severe cases that look very different than the way he's presenting.
During the arguments, I think everyone says stuff they don't mean most of the time. It's just...
Can you explain what happened?
I don't want to talk about the fight, dude.
Okay, so he's saying everyone says things that they regret. So I think he's recognizing that he said some bad things. He's recognizing that he regrets it, which is good. And by the way, indicates if he does have a personality issue, it's not very severe, because people with personality characterological problems, they have a really hard time taking responsibility for the behavior, because when they do that, they have to admit that they're kind of flawed, and that causes them to fall off the cliff into the abyss of emptiness. So he's essentially saying, through, between the lines, I said some horrible things, or I said some bad things last night that I regret. I should not have said those things. But he's minimizing it by saying, well, everyone does that in a fight.
What are you nervous about?
Everything, dude. Dude, we had our bachelorette party, and then
We got into a little argument again, of course.
Why'd you say of course? It makes it seem like there's...
Well, because she finds something wrong, I do it usually almost every time.
Okay, well, that's not a good sign. And who knows, maybe he's slightly accurate. Certainly doesn't seem that way. He is saying, we got in a fight, of course. And the friend, in a very wise, quick response, was like, what do you mean, of course? Like, why is it of course? And he says, well, because she always finds something wrong in what I do. So I'm trying to remember if we've ever seen a situation where Natalie was... No, we've never seen a situation where Natalie was being unreasonable and bringing something up, right?
But yeah, then from there, I basically said, with what you say about me, like, why would you want to marry me anyways? And I'm like, I just don't think we should get married now. And I said that.
You said that to her?
Wait, what? One, is that a safe? Is that like a bank, a giant bank, one of those doors from a bank behind them? It's like, it's an interesting metaphor to occur at a wedding location. But anyway, I mean, maybe it's like, keep my loves. Anyway, but let's rewind that because I didn't really understand what he was saying.
Why'd you say of course? It makes it seem like there's...
Well, because she finds something wrong, I do it usually almost every time. But yeah, then from there, I basically said, with what you say about me, like, why would you want to marry me anyways? And I'm like, I just don't think we should get married now.
Okay, so this is something that is a very common thing that you'll hear from people with certain schemas and personality issues, where in the midst of a fight or a discussion or something, there will be this phrase of, well, why do you even want to be with me? You'll be in a 15-year-long relationship where there's been no real threat, and you're in the middle of a discussion, maybe a mild fight, and one individual will say, well, I don't even understand why you want to be with me. It's usually a phishing attempt, or it's a self-esteem issue. It's one of those usually. It could be other things, but it's either I feel hurt by you, and I feel like you don't love me. Think about like Colt and Debbie, if you're familiar. That when Colt brings up a criticism, Debbie quickly goes to, you hate me. We don't know exactly what she means by that, but it could mean that if there's any kind of criticism because of my relational traumas, I go right to a place where you hate me. You don't want to be with me, instead of having that gray zone where you can love someone and deeply want to be with them and also complain about them and really be annoyed with them sometimes. That's important. And so we use this show as a jumping off point for you couples out there, for you people who are in relationships. Really sit with the reality that your partner really loves you and wants to be with you, but gets annoyed with you sometimes. Hold on to that. That can happen. You can love someone, be dedicated to them, have all the great feelings, attracted to them, respect them, and be occasionally extremely annoyed with them. Like, and chronically about the same thing. There they go again. That happens. Not every couple, most, if not all. Those things can happen at the same time. But when you have issues of self-esteem, or you've never been modeled that before, when you get criticized, then you go to a place of like, well, you hate me. That's what this means. That's what I've learned from the past, is when someone starts complaining, everything blows up. And so it sounds like you don't even want to be with me anymore. I mean, why do you want to be with me? It's kind of a direct phishing attempt, Why do you want to be with me, hoping that in the midst of a fight, which isn't likely to happen, that your partner will say, wait, hold on, I love you. I do want to be with you for these 10 reasons. Let me convince you. Asking a partner in the middle of a fight to do that is not reasonable. You can't, in the middle of a fight, especially if you are the one kind of causing issues, to be like, please lift 15 reasons why you love me so much. It's like, it's hard. So it's not fair, too. The other thing it can indicate is this deep insecurity of, there's something bad happening right now. I'm getting criticized. I'm being rejected, at least partially, for something I did. I'm a horrible, horrible person. I don't know what to do. I'm going to panic right now because I have no way of soothing myself. and it just feels like, oh my God, you hate me, you don't even want to be with me. And and in those instances it becomes more of an internal thing where the person kind of crumbles in. They don't even really notice the other person anymore. They're just like, it's happening again, I'm worthless, no one will ever be with me. It's just like, and the conversation is over at that point. Usually conversation is kind of over either way, honestly, but and you can't really continue down that road. But okay, so he says he said that. I mean, obviously he is leaving a lot out because we're just hearing kind of the parts of it that he wants to disclose. But so according to him, she started complaining. He said, well, it sounds like you don't even want to be with me. Why do you want to be with me? And then he says that and then I said, well, I don't even know if I want to be with you. So we could absolutely, or at least I can, because I've seen so many fights that have those beats in it. And we've seen a little bit of the way that these two are. We could imagine what sort of filled in those gaps. Maybe we'll find out.
I said that.
You said that to her?
It seems like you do have doubts. It's like you don't want to jump into something if you know she's not fully committed.
The argument between Natalie and I just believe it stemmed from me having to prove myself all the time. Do you think I'm pretty?
Do I think you're pretty?
Do you think I'm pretty?
Are you fishing for
Okay, so according to him, he's saying it stems from me having to prove myself all the time. So from his perspective, he's constantly being criticized and proving that he's a good enough person or something, when that's an interesting way of putting it, right? Because if anything, he's the one who introduces the idea of proof, right? That he's like, compliment me. So, this shows that at least in this moment, it looks like he doesn't have a grasp, doesn't have insight into what his insecurities are and how they manifest in the way he sees the world, how he sees her, how he interprets her requests or criticism, and how he interprets his own behavior. It's hard to know, of course, what's going on behind the scenes.
compliments right now? Not really.
Honestly, it's so, you gotta stop doing that. Cause I'm trying to have a fun conversation.
Now, she would, I think, out of insecurity in the beginning, do that thing where she would be playfully rejecting of him, which at times he would play along, and other times it was just like, oh, like really, and we've been over that. So yeah, I mean, that was a legit request that I thought he made really well. He was like, could you just stop doing that? And then there was that other time when they're on the beach at night and he thought she was doing that when it didn't seem like she was, and he was just like, you're doing it again. So it looks like some perceptual issues, some self-regulation issues.
Take your shirts off. Actually, put it back on. I'm good.
You're a piece of shit. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. It's like we all have breaking points and whatnot.
I mean, they're editing it to make Natalie look pretty bad. I mean, unless you really remembered all those scenes because those scenes weren't great. And I mean, but the way, just like that one little clip of, you're a piece of shit. Like that was in the midst of it wasn't, I think it wasn't great that she was doing that, but it looked verbally abusive just from that clip. It's like, yeah, okay, so maybe we'll find out what the fight was.
And I had mine that night. I just never feel like I'm enough.
Just know that whatever you do, we'll be here.
Okay, so he just said, I kind of feel like, see, it's a safe. Is that not a safe door? That would scare me. I'd be like, am I gonna get locked in here? I mean, it looks like it's a dressing room. They've changed a safe into, because you can see anyway, point is that he says, let's rewind that. I never feel good enough.
Conversation.
Take your shirts off. Actually, put it back on. I'm good.
You're a piece of shit. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. It's like we all have breaking points and whatnot, and I had mine that night. I just never feel like I'm enough.
I just never feel like I'm enough. So if I were to work with him, which of course I wouldn't, because my practice is closed. One, it's been closed for a long time, but meaning I haven't accepted new clients. I have clients. Anyway, point is that if I were to work with him, that would be what I would investigate. I never feel good enough. Okay, let's look at that, because it might be independent of the way you're being treated. It might be triggered by the way you're being treated. But your reactivity to that, let's look into that. Where'd that come from? How does it affect your perceptions of others? How does it affect you creating situations where you kind of invite criticism to yourself? That's what I would focus on. I never feel good enough. I never feel enough. And that's a very frequent relational trauma that people have. Some of you, I'm guessing a good percentage of you, at the core of a lot of your pain and defenses and problems in your reactivity to other people has to do with this assumption that you're not good enough, and being very sensitive to indications of that, either by pulling away or by attacking or overcompensating. There's various different ways that we try to overcome that. Some of us will do it by bragging. Some of us will do it by trying to elicit a lot of compliments, which is, it's not terrible if you own the feeling, which I think he did sometimes. Some of us will just withdraw from relationships entirely. Some of us will see criticism where there isn't any, which we seemingly saw at that dinner on the beach in the evening when she was just saying something. I can't remember what she was saying, but it didn't look to me like she was being mean in that way that he was asking her not to be. And he reacted as if it was happening. So it would distort. It's like, there it is again. You're hyper vigilant. The analogy is that, let's say you're walking through the woods near your house. There's a trail and you hear a noise in the woods. And then the next day you're walking through the woods, you hear a noise in the woods. And the third day you're walking through the forest, you hear a noise and you see a bear, like a grizzly bear, just sitting right there, and it runs after you and you get away from it and you're like, whoa, my life, I almost just died right there. Okay, the fourth day you're walking through the woods, you hear a noise, you better believe you're going to assume that's the bear, right? You don't know what it is, but your body, and you're going to run. You're going to be like, that's the bear. But you don't know it's the bear. It could have been anything. In fact, the first 2 days when you heard noise, you don't know that was a bear either. You know it was a bear the third day. You don't know if it was the bear the first, second, or fourth. But you assume it is. Why? Because it's better safe than sorry, right? That's how we are. So when we see evidence of, like, smells like criticism, smells like I'm being attacked, then you react against it. You're like, I got to shut this down. I've got to alert. Stop doing that. I've got to fight against her. I've got to withdraw. I got to yell. I got to reject. Even though it wasn't anything. It was just the noise in the woods.
Forevermore.
It's so hard to describe, what we've been through. And I honestly, I just want you to know that I love you. I do. 1,000 times over. You're my best friend. And there was no one else I'd rather do this with in my entire life.
Okay, yeah, good. All right, so not good, but good for him. He's saying, I do. It looked pained. I think he's worried that she's going to say no because they just got in a fight. If I was to make a bet, I would say she's going to say yes because, I don't know, I think she believes in him or is not that devastated by the fight, seemingly. And I don't think she would be unwise to be that way. But I could also her saying no right now and saying, look, you're too volatile. You got a temper. And I see some signs here that things could get real bad between the two of us. So I don't know. I could see her, actually, yeah, I could see her saying anything, but I think she's going to say yes because I think she loves him.
Do you take Shayne James Jansen to be your husband forevermore?
I'm so glad that we shared this journey together. I think we've grown a lot as two people who have fallen in love. I know I've grown a lot because of you, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like it was headed that, that when they start off, I've grown so much. That's not a good sign. So she says she doesn't. Okay, yeah, I mean, I get it. And I think that for her, it's like, we've had some pretty volatile situations, like last night and that other fight where I thought I was being totally fine, and then you just were interpreting everything like I was yelling at you or something, and you said you were done and you wandered off. Like, wow, that's pretty severe. And yeah, so if she had said I do, that would have, to me, been not imprudent, and saying no, it's a careful decision. It's like, well, this could be bad, and might I meet someone better or the same who just doesn't have those kinds of issues, or might they date after this? That's what Giannina and that fella did. What was his name? Anyway, so okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry, Shayne. I still love you, and you're still my best friend. Like, we have really big issues to sort through.
Okay, that sounds like she just wants more time. I still love you. You're still my best friend, but we have issues to work through. Sounds like, let's work through those issues. Okay, so yeah, she just wants some more time to make sure that they can overcome some of the initial barriers in a relationship working, and then maybe they'll get married later. Yeah, smart move.
I know. Don't worry.
I wish they had some other way of framing these situations where it's like left at the altar, instead of having a situation that would be more appropriate where she just is kind of like, can I take a rain check on that question? Can everyone pause? Give me another 3 more months, like, because it's not really leaving him at the altar. It's just, she's just like, look, I just don't want to get married right now. Maybe if we work through a couple issues, but yeah. And he seems to take it okay. I'm guessing he's going to be bummed, kind of, but I think he'll bounce back and say, yeah, let's work on those things.
Really, what? I know. It's not your fault. I can't be mad at what you said. I respect it.
We can still try to work on this. I'm not closing the door on us. I just think we need...
Yeah, he's hurt. I think he was hoping she would say yes and not get a maybe. And he's in pain. And, you feel bad for him. I do. She's trying to reassure him. I think she could do a little bit. If she really wants to reassure him, she could hug him and kiss him and say, I love you, and I'm sorry, and let's work on these things. Maybe that motivation has been reduced by the big fight they got in last night.
Sure, but respectfully, I need time to think about that, so it's up to them. Okay? You know what? I'm sorry that I said what I said. It's how I truly felt. We can talk about that later if you want, but without this kind of stuff, it's like...
So you're saying you truly felt like you hated me and I was the worst thing for you at that moment?
So he's saying he needs some time to think, meaning he doesn't know if he wants to continue with the relationship, which is fair. Then he says, I just want you to know that I was just telling you how I felt. And she's like, so you truly feel that you hate me? You truly... And people do this all the time, and I don't know, for some reason, maybe I've just heard it literally my entire career, and every time I hear it, it's not true. When people say, like, look, I'm just telling you how I feel. And I'm like, no, you weren't. You weren't telling them how you feel. You were saying things off the top of your head. You were going with your urges. You were not editing what you were saying. But it's not how you feel. How you feel is pain or fear. That's how you feel. What you were saying was, I think you're a piece of crap. That's not a feeling. That's not an emotion. You're telling someone what you think. You're telling someone a conclusion. You're insulting someone. You're trying to hurt their feelings. That's not telling someone how you feel. Look, I was just telling you how I felt. It somehow erases responsibility. Look, this is just how I feel. So that means you can say anything and do anything. Like you put Hitler in front of the firing squad. He's like, look, I was just operating how I felt. Sorry to bring up Hitler, but it's like, no, it's not a license to do whatever. So it shows that, he's had time to think, and he still is struggling with taking responsibility.
Why not fair?
I just didn't know what you meant by what you said. You truly meant those words.
I told you 100 times over I didn't. And I have to live with myself the rest of my life with that. I can't apologize more than I've done.
Okay, so I apologize every single time. So, okay, I think he's retracting. She's saying, so by saying you meant everything, you're just saying how you feel like I'm a piece of crap or whatever she was saying that he said. And he feels boxed in, I think, and he's having a hard time. I'm guessing that on the distress scale right now, he's like an 8 or something. He looks like he's calm. One of the biases we have about particularly men is that when they're in situations like this, that they're just calm, they're super cool and everything's fine. And because boys are socialized to hide their emotions. So when, in fact, sometimes the more calm someone looks, particularly a man, the more freaked out they are. So, and I can relate to that, honestly. Like I in a pinch, if I don't know what's happening, like I just try to act like I'm not affected by it, which is not helpful to people if they're trying to help me. Anyway, so he could be extremely distressed right now. I would guess that he very much is. He sounds like he is. The thing, he sounds kind of frantic in the things that he's saying. So we can't really bank on what he's saying right now as being his true feelings. Who knows? But he's saying, I think, a couple things. One is no, I said a lot of regrettable things. It's that of a child, right? So you come to a child, and they're so ashamed. They're just like, please accept me, and they'll say anything. I didn't do it, and you're like, I saw you do it. Okay, fine, I did it. I'm just so sorry I did it. Can we move on? It's just desperation of like, let's. You're gonna reject me. I'm gonna be rejected. So I think that's kind of what happened. And then there's this other sentiment that's coming in. That's a passive aggression of I apologize every single effing time I can, which gives this message that is like, you always criticize, you never let up with the criticism, which, as who knows, I don't know about Shayne, but people who have been criticized a lot, or people who have been neglected or rejected a lot as a child consistently, have extreme sensitive to criticism, and have, one, they're devastated by it, and two, they have very elaborate defenses against it. Sometimes it's an accusation of, you're always criticizing me, and it's just like, I didn't know I was even criticizing you in this moment.
I apologize every single fucking time I can. And I told you I own it and I'm living up to it. I have to live with it the rest of my life. Okay.
So this is his version of an apology. I said, I'm sorry, okay, I just have to live with it the rest of my life. It sounds like he's said these sort of things before. Like I said, I'm guessing he's in extreme distress. He feels humiliated. He feels rejected. He was rejected. Just imagine that. Just imagine being rejected on the altar in front of all your friends and family and on international television. Just how crappy that would feel. It would feel really, really bad. Even if Natalie was totally justified, which I think she is. So I think he's just flipping out right now in a very reasonable way. So I wish they would just sort of give it a few days and talk later.
Before I fight, I was 100% sure I was going to marry him today. Like, today would have looked so different. But saying that you hate someone, telling someone you're the worst thing that's ever happened to them, those cannot be unintentionally said.
They can't be unintentionally said, but they can be massive distortions based on one's triggers in the moment. So now she's totally reasonable for saying, like, you said what? I'm the worst thing that ever happened to you. You hate me. Where is this coming from? So she has every reason to be concerned, but I doubt he really believes that to be true. He was triggered and he was reacting.
I thought today truly was going to be the happiest day of my life. I got to a point where I just emotionally could not do it anymore.
And it really just one of the titles you could have for Love is Blind is rushed marriages. That's, that could be the other title of this show. It really points to the importance of most of it. Someone asked me recently, actually Jessica from the first season of Love is Blind had me on her podcast, and she asked me, it was a lovely conversation, and she asked me, or her co-host asked me, do you think it's wise that people get married so quickly? And what I said was, it can work, and it worked the first season, right? You have Matt and Amber. I mean, worked meaning it looks like they're satisfied. It looks like they're still together. And Cam and Lauren, right, are still together. And so can it work? Yeah. Is it advisable? No, especially when you don't have to. If there's some major impediment on allowing time, sometimes you do. For some people, they're just like, look, let's just make this happen, and then we'll just lock it in, like kind of the show does, and then we'll just have to make it work. And so for some people, that can happen. You know, arranged marriages sometimes work out that way. But if you can, and you're not desperate for that kind of quickness, then of course you should give it more time. And for her, Natalie, she's like, up until last night, I was 100% in, but seeing the way he reacted, now I'm like, I don't know. And so maybe she completely dodged a bullet by him revealing a side of himself the night before the wedding.
I don't apologize. That's how you feel. I don't apologize for how I feel. I don't apologize for it. Yeah.
I don't apologize for how I feel. Okay, how do you feel? Did you tell her how you felt, or did you say that she's the worst thing that ever happened to you? Because it can't be possibly true. So, did you tell her that you felt hurt? Did you tell her that you felt scared? Did you tell her that you felt angry? Did you tell her how you felt?
I don't apologize either. All right?
Yeah, he has the vibe of an ashamed boy. Even when he was on the altar, you could just see him like, the way he was approaching it, it felt that of a child. It felt like he was regressing. I'm not saying he is a child. I'm not saying he always acts like a child, but I think he has some, I don't know. I would be surprised if he didn't have some significant relational traumas growing up that resulted in him having a touch point, a cornerstone in his personality regarding regression to a particular kind of vibe, that of maybe like a fifth grader or something, who is ashamed of themselves. Is like, please love me, like I'm nothing, but please be there for me.
I'm fucking hurt. I'm hurt, okay? I'm very hurt. I'm very sad. What else do you want to know about it, man?
All right, that's how you feel. So you get the sense the producers are hounding him, which is uncool. And he's just like, I'm hurt and I'm sad. Okay, well, tell Natalie that. Give her a chance. She's trustworthy. That's how you feel. Tell her that.
I said what I had to say. I don't know. I need time to process it, man. I don't know. Like it's just all blur right now. Like, what's going on? I'm sorry. It's all fucking blurred.
Blurred. So he's massively activated. I'm guessing he could be a 10. I wouldn't blame him. I mean, he just got rejected at the altar. So, yeah, to ask him to discuss intellectually what's happening for him is a lot to ask.
Still love her. Still think she's a good person. But do you think that I'm actually going to fucking come back to you after that kind of stuff again? What a fucking day.
Okay, so he's saying he might not go back to her because of the hurt. I don't think that would be wise from his standpoint, because I think she is trustworthy and I think she is a good partner for him. So hopefully he changes his mind.
I still love Shayne, and knowing he was devastated by my response, like, obviously breaks my heart. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and it just like affirms that I've made the right decision for myself.
Okay, now if I were there, I'd really want to drill down on that. What she means by that, when you say a weight has been lifted off her shoulders, is that the weight of the pressure of having to make a choice about marriage with someone that you genuinely might want to be married to one day, or is that a feeling of the burden of him has been released from me? Because that would be a different feeling, right?
I don't have those same feelings anymore for Shayne. When I was standing at the altar with Shayne and looking at him, I felt on edge and scared. For me, that was the moment where I was like, this is not it. I truly, truly loved him, but I think love can only go so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's starting to make it sound like she is more in the camp that this might not work. And she's telling Shayne, let's work on it, with thinking, look, this might not work. So she might be more ambivalent about even being with him than I thought she would be. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.